President Cyril Ramaphosa has instructed Gauteng leaders to fix the province ahead of the G20 Summit. Ramaphosa lamented the state of Gauteng and its municipalities. He was speaking during his interaction yesterday with the provincial leadership at the Johannesburg Council Chambers in Braamfontein. His visit is part of the district development model of integrated planning. Several cabinet ministers and their deputies, as well as some government officials, accompanied the president on the visit. Meanwhile, the latest quality of life survey in Gauteng found that the quality of life in the province continues to decline. For more on this, we are joined virtually by the research director at the Gauteng City Region Observatory, Graeme Gotz. Graeme, thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thank you for the invite, Leanne.
So the president's not a very happy man about the declining state of the province and the city of Johannesburg. He says he wants to fix it urgently. The skeptic in me says is that the president actually spends a lot of time here in Johannesburg and lives here. Only noticing it yesterday, I'm not sure. Talk to me. Where do you begin to fix this city?
Well, that's a big question. There's a lot that's going wrong according to our own analysis. Maybe I should just quickly say that what I'll talk to you today is some of the results of our quality of life survey, which we run every 2 years. And the last survey was released in October last year. We interviewed 14,000 people across Gauteng who told us what they think and feel about the state of Gauteng. And then we've also done a little bit of research specifically for the presidency in preparation for the visit and looked at some of the objective measures. And things are pretty bleak, I have to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So just by way of illustration, I can just quote one stat. We looked at gross value add, which is GDP per capita, and the city of Johannesburg has basically not grown in terms of wealth since the early 2000s. Yes, things went up, but then plummeted after 2010, and the city is effectively poorer than it was 15 years ago, and not any richer than it was 20 years ago. Yeah. Things are pretty bad, I have to say.
Yeah, and it's something that the residents of the city feel on a daily basis. I mean, if we just talk about some things, water shortages, long outages due to old infrastructure. You see traffic lights that do not work. They're lying on their side. Many cables have been stolen. The streets are dark. The potholes on the roads. The water burst pipes that are running everywhere in the city. I mean, you'll see 3 burst pipes on one road purely because the infrastructure cannot handle what is going on. I mean, under the current state, do you think Gauteng will be able to overcome the challenges and actually showcase itself to the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we have to look at is getting back to the basics and restoring trust in government. It's very, very telling that our survey shows that about 68% of our respondents don't trust the current leaders of government. When we ask them the question, do you think that officials deal with the residents on the front line in the spirit of Batopele, 75% say no. 75% say the country is going in the wrong direction. And really what we have to do is work in a concerted fashion in order to restore the trust that people have in government. Now, how to do that? Getting back to basics. So if people can see that potholes are being repaired on a day-to-day basis, if they're driving through to work and seeing repair crews on the roads, it something triggers in the mind, right, that things are improving. But yeah, there's a lot of structural challenges. The city has seen a financial deficit for the last 2 financial years. National governments can operate with revenue being exceeded by expenditure, and the difference is covered with debt financing. Municipalities are not allowed to do that. If you have expenditure exceeding revenue, you're in deficit, and it means you're in deep trouble. So getting residents to pay for their services, making sure that you have credible budgets that keep expenditure in line with the money actually coming in, so that you're not feeling like you're in a crisis all the time and can't fund the infrastructure that you need in order to repair those potholes, or deal with electricity and water outages. That's where it starts.
Yeah, and that's dealing with the basics, and getting down to basics is probably where the problem is. And there's also the mass overpopulation of the province. I mean, there is a massive population, and it just grows and grows and grows. And you can see that the city of Johannesburg is crumbling under the pressure of the amount of people that are now desperate to get the basic services that you talk about. The infrastructure is crumbling. I go back to, lights not working, water provision is not enough. And this is a big problem in terms of getting service delivery to people and overpopulation. What does it say about that? I mean, when you look at the survey, do people speak to that they feel that Joburg is just overpopulated right now?
Yeah, let me just say that overpopulation and inward migration is quite a complicated story. There's no question that all the cities in the country are growing fast. There is some recent evidence that the population growth rates are beginning to wane. In fact, the census results from Johannesburg, you might remember a story from about 2 years ago, showed a very surprising growth rate figure for Johannesburg. We think that the census numbers are probably wrong there, but they may suggest that the population growth rates are in fact coming down. Now, that may not necessarily be a good thing, and that might be a surprising thing to hear, but it may not necessarily be a good thing, because what it says is that people may not want to come and live here or stay here. Mm-hmm. Now, as much as we want service delivery challenges to be in the realm of what's feasible to address, you also don't want a situation where people are hedging their bets and sort of coming into the city, maybe setting up an informal shack in an informal settlement, but really they're trying to make livelihoods elsewhere, because what happens then is they don't invest in the city. They take whatever money they can make here and they put it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Now, that's bad for development over the long run.
Yeah, it really is bad. I mean, that's not something you want to hear. I mean, in this quality of life survey, I mean, you've said that Gauteng has been declining since 2020. I mean, for 15 years, and one would argue perhaps it's been a decline a lot more since then. But the decline has sped up, and that is the reality. I mean, if we had to look at a graph, I can imagine it's a very steep graph of that decline that's happened here in Gauteng. Has it reached its lowest level? Or do you think this, when it's done again, will show more negativity coming through?
Yeah, so that is an interesting question, Leanne, because so let me just take a step back and say that with our survey being run every 2 years, we ran it in 2015, 16, 17, 18, in the depth of COVID, which was 2020, 21, and then again in 23, 24, with the results coming out last October. And the results are really interesting, because what they show is slow development, but development up until 2017-18, a big crash under COVID, and that was completely understandable. We understand what COVID did to the economy, to people's sense of safety, and so on and so forth. And we were really hoping that the results would improve in the last survey, and they haven't. Now, that raises the question, if things are continuing to decline, and we call this in our survey write-ups a polycrisis. If things continue to decline, where are we going to stand in the next survey iteration, which will run in 2 to 3 years' time?
Yeah.
So one of the things that we do is we take across the survey, there's about 200 questions. We extract about 30 variables and put it together into a single index measure, which is called our Quality of Life Index. And that was going up to about 64 out of 100, not high, but it was going up, up until 2017-18, got crunched under COVID, and now it's below 60. And the question we're asking ourselves, can it go even lower? And we think it probably can.
Probably can.
Use this moment.
I would imagine filling in a survey today would be many people not too happy with the state at the moment. They're really not. How did we get here? Because that, I imagine, is something that people also speak to. Is Joburg, and I know, because I mean this is my home city. I was born here, lived here, I've never left here in terms of living here, and I've watched it deteriorate very fast. But how did this happen? Where did we lose control? Or where did the government lose control, should I say?
I think we need to look at two different dimensions here. The one is structural dimensions, and clearly the economy plays an important role here. So I just come back to what I was saying earlier. On a GDP per capita basis, our cities were growing in quite a healthy rate up until about 2010, and then plummeted thereafter. There was a little increase in 2017-18, and then it's gone down under COVID, and not much growth since then. So the economy is really suffering, and that structural set of circumstances flows over into all sorts of other measures. So crime rates, for example, we can see murder rates per 100,000 were in the high 50s in the early 2000s. They came down all the way to about 25 per 100,000, and now they've shot back up to 48. So you can see how economic stress causes stress in many other areas, including perceived safety. Now, some of those things government just cannot do anything about. Donald Trump sneezes today, and something happens in the world economy tomorrow. We saw this in particular in COVID. No one could have anticipated that. But government and management is the other dimension. And here we're looking for a local government that is able to anticipate potential crises, but manage to the everyday in a way that keeps stability. And we just haven't seen that in the city of Johannesburg. 11 mayors over the last 10 years, extremely unstable coalition governments. Our data tells us that, well, city data from their own annual reports says that about 30% of senior management posts remain unfilled. There's a capacity deficit there. The inability to collect revenue across a whole range of different debtors, and so on and so forth. The inability to do credible budgets. All of those are within the city's control. And the point I think that we're making is, regardless of structural crisis, one's got to manage in such a way that you manage down the risks, manage to what your residents are expecting you to do.
Yeah. All right, we leave it there. Thank you. Graeme Gotz, Research Director at the Gauteng City Region Observatory, speaking about the quality of life in Gauteng that is declining rapidly when you look at the survey. It was done in October 2024, but certainly still standing for the conversation and the events that we saw taking place yesterday with the President saying, fix Johannesburg and do it fast.